Started. So this is being recorded, everyone. Thank you all to those who submitted questions. We're going to get started with those questions and start with kind of an overview. And as we get into the discussion, if you have additional questions, please put them in the chat. And as the discussion progresses, I'll pick them up from the chat and have the dialogue with Principal Klein. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Brent. One of the questions that had come up a little orthogonal to reopening discussion was about SAT for juniors. So I thought maybe we would just knock that one out of the park first. And
so SAT for juniors is going to be on April 13th, as long as the conditions allow. It's going to be during the school day. Teachers will be administrating the tests. At this point, still, we're not able to have parent volunteers. If that changes, I'm sure I'll be asking for some additional support. This test will only be offered for the 11th grade students, who are interested in taking the test for a variety of reasons, including the National Merit Scholarship. There's going to be some safety protocols that will be need to be followed. We'll also removing our health screener process into Parent Square, which will be a process for kids coming back on campus to use every day, and that'll be also an expectation for those students attending the SAT. Parents will have to go through Parent Square to ensure that there's no symptoms or anything like that for any of their students. The signups will go out to juniors tomorrow via Schoology, and everybody will have 1 week to sign up. And the signups will close on the 25th of February.
Perfect.
Students will receive the confirmation that they've registered and general information about the testing date by March 5th. And then finally, within 2 weeks of the exam, students and parents will be sent an email with all the detailed information, including room assignments, protocols, and procedures about the testing day, in addition to any information about accommodations that have been approved and how we'll be dealing with that.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's great. So getting into reopening, I think maybe you can start with some context around why the reopening discussion is happening now. And even though while we're still in purple tier, and maybe explain to our audience what is prompting all of this.
Yeah, I mean, even now, Paly, we're considered open currently right now because we have cohorts on campus. And we're able to reopen fully in this new model to all students that want to return to campus. And it's all based on our progress in terms of the lack of positive cases. And so once we get the information about moving to the red tier, we'll be able to fully implement this model. And so really that's the biggest reason why we're able to do this, because there's been significant improvements in the state of California and in our county. And so we're able to soon, that we'll be hearing, I hope, maybe even next week, that there'll be some movement into the red tier.
Okay, great. So maybe you can start with a broad sort of description of what reopening will look like for our students at Paly. And
yeah, what will it look like? And, quite honestly, everyone, there's lots of details that we're still figuring out, but basically what it's going to look like, this is for the students that absolutely need to get back involved in peer groups and have, that some personal interaction with their teachers in their classroom. Those that decide to come onto campus in the in-person learning model will be dividing the school into half, and we sent out a survey just so that we can start getting an idea of the number of students, parents interested in doing that. That's going to help us kind of do an analyzation of our data, of our numbers, and see where the best split will be so that we can even out the classes as much as possible. And students will be showing up into, if we divide it, from A to L, let's say those students will be showing up on Tuesday and Thursday, and the second half of the alphabet will be on Wednesday or Thursday and Friday. And this is going to be a choice, and it's going to be a continuous choice in terms of whether or not students want to participate in the in-person learning on a weekly basis. The details of how to determine that, we're still working that out, quite frankly. Whether or not that we ask a commitment level on the Friday before the next week who is interested, so we have an understanding, or if we have enough flexibility to not have to determine that and just go straight through alphabet and have enough accommodations for those students that we know are showing up. So we're going to have a plan based upon the data that we know, but I am envisioning once it actually happens, we're going to have to do some fine tuning here and there, and we might have to select students outside of that cutoff alphabet to show up maybe on another day so that we can even out some of the class sizes. And we won't be able to know that actually until it happens. Lots of questions about, some of, restrictions that we're implementing or expectations. I call them more expectations. It's all in line with the current guidelines that we have. Today's guidelines, I will guarantee everybody are going to be different than tomorrow's guidelines. And so that's the moving target that we're up against. And so in our best thinking now, we are creating this model based off our current guidelines. And so we might see some adjustment in terms of what we're asking and what we're doing, but this is a program, an opportunity for those students to get out of their room and come back into school and to experience school again and bring not only their laughter, their conversations, but their interactions with other students. Although we're going to be expecting students to maintain the 6 feet, I'm absolutely guaranteed, and I've been seeing it even with our cohorts, that they're still able to mingle, they're still able to talk, they're still able to be kids, and they're doing it extremely appropriately from the observations that I see daily at Paly.
So Brent, let me make sure I understand it as a parent, and hopefully this will help clarify it for our audience as well. So I have a junior. She has 5 classes, honestly. I think, no, sorry, she has 4 classes on a typical Wednesday, or on a typical Tuesday or on a Thursday. Say she gets the grouping to come to school on Tuesday and Wednesday.
Yes.
And maybe she's made the commitment on Friday, or maybe she needs to let you know on Tuesday morning that she plans on coming in that day. She'd fill out her Parent Square screening. I am thinking that the student fills out that Parent Square screening, or is it that the parent has to do that?
From what I understand now, we're going to be asking the parents to do that.
Okay.
In the morning. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I would fill out the Parent Square screening, indicating that my child is okay to come back to school that day.
Mm-hmm.
They bike to school, hopefully. They lock their bike in their cage. They go to their first period class, say it's math class with Mr. Friedland. They go to his room.
Yeah.
After that, they have, I think, a 10-minute or 15-minute passing period, and they actually get up out of their seat and move to their next class. Right? And they have their subject teacher in that class. And then what would happen at lunch?
Lunch will be lunchtime. Lunch, we will be designating, areas where students can have lunch. And just like we're doing with the cohorts, there's several tables around with chairs that are distance appropriate. Kids can sit on the lawn and the quad. They can, as long as they're maintaining the distance, they can be kids.
Okay. So they'll have an opportunity to interact with one another, hang out with their friends, potentially at lunch, maybe not during passing period, but at least at lunch, and then go back to their classes. And then what if they have a prep in the middle of the day? What would they do then?
If they have a prep during the middle of the day, we're going to be designating some specific areas for kids to go during that time, so that they can access Wi-Fi. I mean, and they can, from my best thinking right now, they could sit on a bench in the middle of in the quad and do their work and just again maintain and practice everything about what we're asking students to do in terms of the protocol.
Okay. Specific classes, parents have asked if you have any thoughts yet about how those classes in particular would be carried out.
You froze up in the middle of it, so I don't know
Sorry.
what's
So
class.
the music classes.
Okay.
Can you hear me? Yeah, maybe you could talk a little bit about how those work.
I mean, so currently the music classes, band and the choir, when they are playing their instruments, they are going to have to be playing outside. And so we're working on designating appropriate outdoor spaces for both of these groups in order to do that. If they're going to be activities that don't require playing or singing, they can go into their rehearsal spaces and stuff. For PE, we are looking at, because we have enough PE teachers that we can double up on particular class periods. And so a teacher can take the groups of kids outside that are there physically. Meanwhile, another teacher can keep going with the classes that are online during that particular class period.
Okay. Will we be also doing 0 period PE?
Yes.
Okay, so that'll be on campus. And do students need to stay for the whole day of their classes, or can they do a couple of classes in the morning and then decide to go home and do the rest of the classes by Zoom?
Yeah, I mean, we can't have kids go home and come back. So once you go home or you leave, you're not able to return back to campus currently, as we're in, yeah, that's going to be a rule that we'll be setting up immediately. If you have a prep period at the beginning or the end of your day, you can absolutely go home for that particular period.
Okay.
Or you can stay home in the morning if your period is in the first class of the day and then come to school late.
Okay. And so all classes, whether it's ceramics or culinary arts or PE or yoga or band or choir, all of those classes will be held, and there will be an in-person and an online simultaneous class happening.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I mean, just, speaking with a band director today, I mean, he's working out so he could do both simultaneously. And same would probably occur with like the foods class and things. They're thinking pretty hard about how to make this work.
Okay. If we could get into a little bit more clarity around this Zoom from the room concept, that's
you're going out of order on me here. Okay.
I'm sorry. I'm kind of tracking the conversation and then going back and forth. I think we've
that's fine. That's fine.
We'll go back to safety measures in a minute.
Okay. Yeah. What's the difference between live streaming and Zoom in the room, right? I mean, the best I can tell everybody right now to help clarify that, live streaming would be more that you're showing everything, right? You're showing the kids in the room, you're showing your boards, and you're teaching to I think it's just more of an exposure thing. With the Zoom in the room, we're taking what we're doing now currently and bringing it into a classroom, and it's hard to predict. And I think that we all just need to let some things happen and see how the transition happens. And so, Zoom in the room would be teaching all of it online, and so I'm still doing what I'm doing as a teacher right now. And I'm doing that in my classroom with students with me, and they're still on their computer with the same Zoom accessing as well as the students at home. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's going to help anybody clarify it, but that's the best that I can give you right now.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting baseline. I've done a fair amount of research looking at what other schools are doing, both in the Bay Area and California and even around the country. And I would say this is kind of the prevalent model in high school to open during this pandemic time. So I know this feels fresh and new and different for us at Paly and in Palo Alto, but there's methodology out there, and I'm sure as we get comfortable with the idea, we'll start learning what those best practices are. And
I'm the principal, not a teacher, and so I have different perspectives. And I've been on campus every single day since July. And so we need to allow uh, the the teachers to get comfortable getting back onto campus, getting back into the groove. I can tell you my conversation that I had with several groups of teachers today was different than last week when the announcement was first made. I think also that it was a different conversation today because of the announcement and information of shots being more accessible, the vaccine. And so I think that we just will need to allow teachers to get going in this process. And I'm going to imagine that what teachers might feel and think that it looks like without trying it is going to be different once we start doing it in classrooms.
Great. Going back to some of the additional things that just clarifying questions around the reopening model. So it was mentioned that it's going to be a closed campus and no going back and forth to town and country.
And yes, that is correct. And that's going to be for the initial phase-in of this new program. Once we get out of the purple tier, no, into the orange. I mean, so sorry, we'll go into the red. Once we get out of the red and into the orange, we'll be able to lighten things up a little bit more, and then we'll allow to have the open campus back up.
Okay, great. And Principal Klein, do you have any information yet on the quarantine procedure, how we're going to handle exposures if a student tests positive, what happens then?
Yeah, great question. Again, a question that keeps moving. So currently, our students in their classrooms will be the desks are 6 feet apart. If a student in a classroom is determined that that there is a incident where it could be a COVID exposure or a positive case, what we would have to look at then is looking at, well, I mean, of course, we would communicate to the entire class, but then more specific because each classroom is going to have we're going to have a seating chart, and kids will be expected to can go back to that same seat every day that they're there. If it's determined that there is a student that was tested positive, what we would need to do is to look at that block of students around that one particular student and notify them, and there would have to be a quarantine of those students. I don't know, kind of little drawing here. You can't really see it because of my background, but so I won't try that. But I can communicate that in a more explicit way when I communicate to parents at the end of this week. So it wouldn't be the whole class. You would be just determining the student. If this was the student in the middle, would be the square of students around that particular student.
Okay.
It's not the entire class, is my point.
Okay. So is there somebody in charge of the different safety measures at Paly? Who is that person? Can you tell us a little bit more about how the screening and everything else is going to be enforced?
Well, Mr. Berkson, assistant principal, is our safety lead.
Mm-hmm.
Currently each of our rooms, they've been inspected based on square footage and air circulation in terms of determining the number. We're getting the full report. It was last week, Tuesday, we had a third party come into our school. They did all the secondary schools to determine the effectiveness of the airflow and the spacing. And so we're getting that report back soon that we'll be sharing with folks. So from listening to, I spend time weekly with the area principals. We talk, it's a lot about sports lately, but we also find time to talk about principal things. I see a significant difference in terms of what has been happening in the Palo Alto Unified School District in terms of airflow and circulation and HEPA filters. And I mean, there's a lots of things that have been addressed, and we're continuing to do that.
Okay. Is there anything that students should be bringing to school with them in terms of additional hand wipes or sanitizer or anything else?
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be based on the student's personal need. We will be supplying classrooms with, hand sanitizer. There's wipes for students. If they, coming into the classroom, they can use the wipes to clean the desk that they're going to. So, I mean, there's appropriate and significant amount of that being provided for all of our classrooms.
Okay. Just going back to lunch just for a brief second, I think there was mention of food being provided at school as well.
Mhm. Yeah, the school district will be providing at no cost lunch to all students. And yeah, that's currently what's happening right now.
Okay, and even though students need to be physically distanced and sit at a safe distance from one another, would siblings be allowed to sit and eat lunch together?
That's a great question. I've not been asked that one yet. I'll let you know.
Okay. Let's see, I'm just going through my questions here. In terms of breakout groups and sort of students working with one another in terms of project work or homework, will they be allowed to interact with one another while they're on campus?
Absolutely, in my opinion, absolutely.
Okay.
You can interact. I've been doing a good job of interacting people at 6 feet for the last several months, so I'm sure kids can do that just as well.
Okay. Biking to school and the bike racks, is there any differences or anything that students should anticipate?
Not that I'm aware of now. I mean, at least just maintain the spacing when you're getting your bike. I don't know if we've placed any signs around the bike area, but we certainly can if that's necessary. There's, from what I can tell, there's tons of bike racks around our school. So, and we also need to think. I think that the most important thing that we all need to think about is, typically, if you've Paly is about 2,100 students, and that's what we're all used to seeing. And if we start breaking it down into the number of students that are actually interested in doing this program, at the most, I would anticipate that we'll get 50% of our students, and so that's it's going to be less if you break that down, and it's really a quarter of the school that you're going to see at any one time. So it's not going to look that full, and there'll be plenty of space for bikes.
Okay. There are a bunch of questions coming up in chat and about the laptop policy and whether students would need to bring headphones or any other gear with them. I wanted to say that I think Paly in particular has had a laptop policy for several years, and it's definitely been an expectation that students bring either their own laptop or a district provided laptop with them to and from school.
And that would still be a continued expectation. And I would imagine students are going to be more comfortable with their own headphones, but we will also have headphone mics available for students that do not have them.
Okay. So is that a recommendation that students who are coming back to campus bring headphones if they want to bring their own?
Yes. And again, all of these details we will be, we're collecting so that we can appropriately communicate to parents and students that have chose this model.
Okay. I know you're going to look at the numbers that come back from the current survey that's out and kind of create the dividing line between the two groups. Is there any anticipation that we might have any sort of overflow at any point in time in any classes?
Yeah,
And
yes,
how would that be handled?
yes, there might, and that's just something that we're anticipating, just in case we, don't get the break off, exactly correct on the first try. And so we will have some large rooms designated as overflow rooms for students that can go to these rooms and continue to access that class via Zoom. And quite honestly, we're going to have some teachers that based upon their own personal medical condition are not able to come to school at this time. And we will also have rooms designated for the students in that classroom of that teacher to go to so that they can access Zoom in a room that's covered by a certificated teacher.
Okay.
Mm.
Could do will lockers be available to students, either the real lockers or the PE lockers?
I know definitely that we will not be using PE lockers. And I will have to get back to you on the lockers at campus.
Okay. And also ID cards, are there?
We
Are
just
students going
took,
to be getting ID cards?
yeah, we just went through the virtual process of school pictures recently, and connected to that was ID cards. So more information on that later.
Okay. Orientation, and in particular, introducing our freshmen to
Right.
campus,
I know,
our
right?
ninth graders.
We plans in the works that to create an orientation experience for our students in the ninth grade.
Okay. Let me just give me a second. So in terms of athletics, will students be allowed to stay on campus prior to sort of practices or conditioning that might be happening a little later in the day?
Sure.
Okay. So it's all sounding very normal, like a
Right.
very normal school experience.
As much as normal we can be,
Maybe
right?
other than the free lunch,
Right.
but let's see.
Yes, we'll have outlets available too, plugs and outlets and cords.
Plugs and outlets, chargers. I don't
Well, bring your own charger, but we'll
bring
have
your
a
own
plug for
charger.
you.
Okay. And some of the other questions. Talked about orientation. And just give me a second. I just want to make sure I'm hitting all the points.
I see a question, will kids remain with their current teachers? Period. Yes, they're staying with it. There is no change to who a student and teacher is. They're staying the same schedule.
Okay, same schedule, same teachers for all their classes. All of their classes are available in person on those designated days. Mondays, any changes to Mondays?
Mondays it will remain as they are currently. And, as I had conversations with students, they were a little miffed about, not being able to change Mondays. Well, changing Mondays was connected to the fact that we couldn't bring kids to campus regularly. And so we were making flexibility on Monday so that we could do that, bring small groups of kids on campus. But since we're able to implement this model, that kind of addresses that situation.
Okay. Some questions around kind of the technical aspects of this Wi-Fi. Do we believe Paly Wi-Fi is adequate to handle all of these people simultaneously logging into Zoom?
I believe so.
Okay. And is there any professional development being provided to teachers? Any other things yet about our smart boards, or any other questions in terms of how this might look?
Yeah, yes, the technology professional development departments are working on providing teachers with additional resources for the Zoom in the room approach. So that is in the works, and I think it's going to be provided to them as soon as next week. In terms of smart boards, many of our classrooms have them. I'm sure that teachers might utilize them. Again, that's gonna I think you'll start seeing some normalcy coming, but it's not going to happen quickly, I believe. And you're going to see things happening as we see currently in the Zoom process. But I'm anticipating that more and more teachers will get more comfortable, and we'll start seeing a shift a little bit.
Okay. Sorry, let me just give me a second to scroll through. Will the library be open before and after school and during usually students would have the opportunity to go during prep to the library.
Yeah, that's a detail that we're still working out in terms of being if we're allowed to do that. So I know the library probably won't be the same, but I believe that we will be working out how to make that accessible to a certain number of groups within whatever, so that we're maintaining appropriate number of students in the library and distance. And I mean, there's tons of great resources and great books, and I've taken a few so far this year, and I want kids to be able to get back and start checking out books. So that's a huge priority.
Could you talk a little bit about bathrooms and bathroom safety, or were you any extra measures happening there? Are they being designated in some way to different people?
I don't believe that we'll actually designate them to specific groups of kids, but we need to we're working on creating the process of identifying, the number of students in the bathroom at one time, so that a student that needs to use the restroom can know that if it's available or not. So still working on that signage and that communication.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit about the timeline? So we've heard different things. Clearly, we don't know when we'll get to red tier, but
Right.
Assuming it's within the month of February, what is the earliest that we would actually see students on campus?
Well, March 2nd is the target date for for the return of teachers back to campus. I think that actually bringing students back won't occur until the 9th, March 9th for students.
Okay.
That's a Tuesday.
Okay, and teachers are coming back on the 2nd, not on the 1st?
Well, the 1st is a Monday. That's as we're keeping Mondays the same, so it'll be the next day.
Okay. Okay, I have a latte cart booked for March 1st, which we might push forward today.
Okay. Sorry about
fine.
that.
That's okay.
I like a good latte.
Yeah. So, and just going back to the commitment, because I'm seeing some additional questions come up. My understanding is that this is going to be extremely flexible. So a student can decide to come to school one week and then change their mind the next week.
Correct.
Okay. So
yes, they can. I'm still working with my team, my admin team, to looking at how we can identify who that might be for the following week, whether that we asked parents and students to commit the Friday before the next week, or we just leave it open. And that's something that we're still in discussion. And actually all of these discussions actually are going in concert with the administrative staff at Gunn as well. So we're really trying our best to align to both schools.
Okay. So, but fundamentally, there's not a commitment that a family needs to make now for the end of the year.
Absolutely not.
It's going to have some level of flexibility, whether it's a few days in advance or day
Right.
off, that you can decide whether or not
Correct.
to come to school or not.
Correct. Yeah,
Right.
you don't have to commit for the entire year. If this is something that a student might try it for a week and they might not like it, and so they don't have to keep doing it, or the reverse. I was talking to a student today that wants to see how it goes first, and then he probably wants to come join us. So
okay. If there are families out there who would like one of the district provided Chromebooks, who should they contact?
I would reach out to Assistant Principal Tom Keating, who oversees our technology. And again, we can communicate that in our ongoing communication about this.
Okay. I've put Mr. Keating's email address in the chat for anybody who wants to reach out to him. And nobody tells him where you got his email address from. So let's see. And again, lots of questions about this lack of commitment or the flexibility, but I'm assuming a student could decide to come in just one of their 2 days if they wanted to, rather than come in both days of the week.
Absolutely.
And if they were distance learning the first week, they could decide to come to school the second week and then not come back ever again if they
Right.
wanted to.
Right. Or, and yeah,
Yeah.
we're trying to be flexible and accommodate and make it work for the kids, that as much as they want to be there, they can be there.
Okay. A few more questions about freshman orientation. And I know you mentioned that you were working on sort of a freshman orientation light. But any more ideas there, or is there anything that we can help as a parent community in terms of supporting you in terms of onboarding our youngest students?
I will let you know more details once I have that figured out.
Okay. Is there going to be any flexibility to move from one group to the other so that kids can come to school with their friends?
Um, I'm trying to be all about flexibility, Charles.
Yeah, no, I know that. Or maybe a better way to ask the question would be, who should they talk to if they want to try and
yeah, let's, I'm going to say, let us get through the first week or two on that. And, let's stick with what we got. And, because we can't move everybody around. That'll just be way too much. And I'll try my best. Absolutely. Do I want kids to be with their friends? Oh, sure I do. And if that can be done, it could be done. If not, then I'll just be honest and say we can't do it.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just scrolling back through the questions. There's some more questions about Zoom from the room. Are there going to be any demos or any pilots or anything even in the next couple of weeks? Is there anything even that we might be able to support you with or help with in terms of just trying to really fine tune some of this model? There are questions about the audio issues and, interference and all those things, which I think get resolved once you're actually physically trying it out.
And I think you're absolutely correct on, we got to figure it out as we go. It's yeah, I did see the comment about building the plane as you're flying it. And I've showed that there's a commercial that it shares that, and it's kind of feel like I'm doing right now. And so, but it'll be built enough for our students to come. Don't worry. Right now, we're just building it frantically. So,
okay. If we have, like some of our classes are actually fairly small.
yeah.
I know some classes that my daughter's in that have less than, 12 to 15 students maximum. Right. Will there be an opportunity maybe for students to come all 4 days a week?
Well, that hasn't been the model yet, but if we have opportunities to provide more time for students, I would be all over that, but let me find out more about that, but definitely a possibility.
Okay, great. So some more questions around contact tracing and cohorts and all of that. So how will Paly manage contact tracing for lunch and for prep?
Well, we're going to be okay at classrooms because we're going to have explicit, seating charts and things. But quite honestly, it's going to be impossible to do that 100% with every student every day wherever they're going, and we're going to have to rely on the conversations that we have with the student in terms of who they felt they were in close contact with at that point. So,
okay. So I think it comes back to enforcing kind of that physical distancing at all times when you're not in the classroom. And is there any additional sort of supervision or thoughts on how that will happen?
yeah, I think that we all need to realize that this enforcement is not going to be on one person, me, the principal. It's going to be on all of us.
Mhm.
Right. And so if this is something that you feel that your child needs, then I'm hoping that that conversation is happening. As I've spoken to, today I did in the ASB Fishbowl, or my interview with the student publications yesterday, or my student group the day before. This has to be based, everybody's responsible, but most importantly the student will be. If I'm going to be asked to police this 24/7 about wearing a mask, staying social distancing, um, or not leaving to go to town and country, then if that's a student that continues to do that, then that student won't be back. We can't do that. And so, of course, I'll be supervising, which I've done every day of my life as a principal. I mean, my best times are outside of my office, and I am look forward to supervising and going back to lunch duty. Quite frankly, I can't believe I just said that. But I'll be around. We'll be visible. The entire admin team, our security monitors. I mean, we're going to be out there. But again, we need the commitment from the students that want to be there, and you need to be there because you want to be there with your peers, and you want to be there so you'd be closer proximity to your teacher and more accessibility to the things that we have available on campus.
Mhm. Okay, great. Yeah, thank you for reinforcing that. And I want to emphasize to the community that this is a choice, right? Really, if you're not comfortable, your student doesn't need to come to school. They're going to have access to their education just as they would today. So let's see, some more questions. Um, will there be any asynchronous days prior to the reopening?
Yes, I believe there will be 2 asynchronous days. I forget the exact days, so there'll be 2 asynchronous days, allows teachers to get back set up into their classrooms.
Mhm. There's a question about ASB students creating a video tour of the campus. Um, Actually, for our community, I know those videos actually exist, and they were created in anticipation of opening schools back in August. So I think there are some details in terms of how this orientation is going to look and what it's going to leverage in terms of pre-existing materials. But Principal Klein, will there be any additional sort of introductory videos or anything else being offered to our community?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I've all 4 assistant principals have within their domains several things to work on, and that is under one of ours to start getting that orientation and with a video and literature set out to all students. Yeah.
Okay. And going back to, oh yeah, so this is a really good question about AP exams. Do we know yet, I know College Board has provided additional options around AP exam dates
Mhm.
and formats, whether they'll be in person or online or both. Do we know yet what we're planning on doing at Paly and Gunn?
The I Jerry Bergson is working with our AP team, and yeah, we're working closely with our teachers to determine which ones we can do remotely or online, and which ones that teachers feel would be most appropriate in person.
Okay. There's some questions again about streaming and why aren't we doing streaming? And so if you want to touch on that again, in my mind, my interpretation is the Zoom from the room model, or leveraging sort of teaching to Zoom, is the baseline.
Yeah.
And I know some teachers are already thinking about what they might do beyond
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I agree with you, and that's what I've been alluding to, is that again, teachers need to get back into their rooms, and they're gonna take what they're doing and transition into a classroom. But I'm pretty confident that you'll start seeing differences in the instructional practice. But what I'm absolutely sure of, and I believe that this is the huge benefit of choosing to come to school, is it is going to be different than being in your room remotely and never being in contact. This is absolutely an opportunity for students to finally see other peers and to interact. Again, I've seen that happening every day now for the last several weeks with our cohorts. They're interacting, they're having conversations, they're laughing, they're playing Frisbee, they're kickball. I mean, they're enjoying themselves together. And I believe that once you bring that into a specific classroom, because right now we have cohorts of students accessing a variety of classes in one room, you're going to start seeing them being more specific into a classroom. I believe that you're going to start seeing greater interactions within that classroom and with that teacher in that room. You know, I know that you're hearing information in contrast to what I just told you, but I believe that that's what teachers do. And I think once there's a stronger level of comfortability, you're going to start seeing an increased level of that. So I believe it is a huge benefit to coming back onto campus, especially for those kids that need to start seeing faces again and being able to communicate in person rather than online.
Okay, great. The video for students by students, I will say that I'm working across PTSA and ASB, and we're definitely talking about different ideas around that. Let me see. Parking. Can students bring their cars to Paly?
Sure. There'll be plenty of parking, Charles.
Okay. Well,
parking
I
permits
assume that we'll
there's-
still have a permit process.
I don't even know if we'll have that. I don't think that that's going to be necessary right now, but I'll stand corrected if I'm wrong on that one, but I
Okay,
will check it out.
both for students as well as volunteers. We used to have little pink slips in our.
Yeah, I know, but that's when the parking lot was full, right? So
Yeah.
there will not be a permit process.
Okay, thank you, Michelle.
Mhm.
And so I
Yeah.
guess we'll let our police folks know that
Yeah.
they shouldn't come and ticket our cars.
Just don't park in my spot, okay?
Okay. Okay, thank you. Let's see. Some comments about instructional minutes that we went down to, but I think that's a broader question than we can address in the next few months. Let's see. Okay, I'm actually, let's see. I think there's anticipation that with the teachers back on campus, the lot will be a little bit more full. For students, for testing, for just regular tests that happen on a day-to-day basis in class, if is there any anticipation that now some will get to write on paper versus doing things online, or is there any guidance on that yet?
Not yet.
Okay. And about the wellness center, any
The wellness
changes?
center is open. It's been open for the last few weeks. And there's clear processes for students to be able to visit, if whether or not our students at home or the students on campus will actually be able to go into the wellness center physically. Yeah.
Okay. There's a question about the testing center. I'm not very familiar with what that is, but will they be able to use the testing center? I assume that we had a separate place for makeup tests and for accommodations.
And that's been open all year, so it'll continue to be open.
Okay. Great. And mask guidelines, do we have any information on what the mask guidelines are?
Currently, what's the CDC guidelines for masks is double masks.
Okay. And I think people are asking about PE, but they're answering the question. Yes, PE will happen. College and career services and guidance, will all of those things also now be offered in person?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So either in person or online, I assume, if that's happening. And then, okay. I think that's comprehensive. I think we got most of the questions. There's a question about sample schedule, but let me try and address that. I think the schedule stays exactly the same.
Yeah, there is no different. It's the same bell schedule. The only difference is if you're in the Tuesday, Wednesday group or the Thursday, Friday group.
Has there been any additional hiring of resources in terms of helping our students' wellness and in mental health in particularly?
Not at this time that I'm aware of.
Okay. And PE and also PE uniforms. So I do know that this year we didn't actually do PE uniforms.
Yeah.
So
They're
do we
gonna,
know yet?
it's gonna be a modified PE experience in person because we can't open the locker rooms at this point. So again, our great adaptability and flexibility of our teachers will be seen. So I know that they've been working on the conversation and looking at how to do this since day one. So.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you. We will absolutely turn all of this information into an FAQ, and we'll work with the administration to get that, as well as any other questions that come up, into a document available for all of you.
Thank you.
And I think with that, I'm going to say thank you very much, Principal Klein. Thank you, Ms. Steingart, as well, for being with us.
Yeah.
And thank you to all the community. If you have any more questions, you definitely know how to reach me. So you can definitely send them into me. You can also send them into palyfaq@gmail.com.
Yeah. And can I say a couple things, because I'm watching this thing go by quickly. The survey is just a survey. It's a poll survey. There is no commitment. But we would love for everybody to let us have a great idea. Not that I have experience with a pandemic, but I have experience with change. My beginning of my principal, I opened up a school. I divided the school up from a large comprehensive high school into 6 small schools, and it was almost overnight. And there's lots of unanswered questions. And this is similar in that way. And that's kind of why I came back to that, building the plane and flying at the same time. There's lots of expertise. There's lots of fabulous teachers and staff and administrative team that I have that are coming up with ideas on the fly and ideas that are working, and we'll get there. I promise you all, we'll get there, so that when your students arrive, we'll have a program that's going to be worthy of students coming to campus. I think it's absolutely imperative. I know not all students need this, but I know that there are students, and probably several that I don't even know, that absolutely need to get back to school. And I guarantee you that we will ensure a safe learning environment that will promote engagement, and it's going to look different, absolutely. And we're not going to see the same Paly that we saw prior to March 13th, but we're going to get there, ladies and gentlemen. And I just, I ask for patience as I continue to kind of lead our ship down this way, and create a path that's going to be appropriate and a great learning experience. So thank you for being here and asking great questions. And if you have more, please email me. I'm willing to talk and to keep the dialogue going, everyone. So thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. This recording will be available on the Paly PTSA website shortly. And then, yes, we will absolutely turn this information into an FAQ and make that available to all of you. I put my email in chat, charug@gmail.com, if you guys have any additional questions, and I'll always answer all your emails. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank
Charles.
you.
Thank you, Charles. Can you and I stay after for a second? Can we do that?
Yes, I can.
Mm-hmm.
Let me stop the recording.